Okay, and greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, and living life, and loving life. I want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button for me. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. Always appreciate it. Every little bit counts. And of course, the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. Tonight we're talking about that spell of illness that you were born in, and the burial trust that springs up out of that. And thus the caption, were you born in a spell of illness and buried in a trust? They're waiting all of your life for a death certificate. They're waiting all of your life for a death certificate. Once they get that death certificate, they can take that statistical record that we've been talking about and separate out all of its different values and settle all the accounts. And then the value that's remaining is known as historical value, to be entered into the National Archives because you were a United States citizen. So let's take a look at some things. I've shown you the one before that the premise is all founded on, and that is the spell of illness under 42 U.S. Code 1395X. So as we take a look at this is 42 U.S. Code is Health and Human Services, Health and Welfare. And the very first definition they have is called a spell of illness. And it says the term spell of illness with respect to any individual means a period of consecutive days. So when mom goes into the hospital and registers as a United States citizen or a resident, that is the individual. So she registers as an individual beginning with the first day. Not included in a previous spell of illness, A, on which such individual is furnished inpatient hospital services, inpatient critical access hospital services, or extended care services, and B, which occurs in a month for which he is entitled to benefits under Part A. Beginning with the first day when mom goes into the hospital bearing labor pains, mom is not in a spell of illness, but because she receives inpatient hospital services, which they furnish, the record is entered under a spell of illness. The very beginning of it, okay? When mom goes in, beginning with the first day on bearing labor pains, which they define and lodge into the records as a spell of illness, on which such individuals furnish inpatient hospital services, and then, beginning with that first day, during that spell of illness, another individual is created. When that child or that legacy heir is born, the record creates another individual. So mom goes into the hospital. She's furnished with inpatient hospital services, known as a spell of illness, while she's in a natural act. This is a misdescription. If mom and dad knew that they were being lodged into that record as a spell of illness while doing something that is totally natural, they might not want to go to that hospital anymore. And this is why I'm saying, again, I'm not saying you shouldn't. It is just my opinion that it's natural and not needed. That is all voluntary. You're doing this voluntarily because it's convenient that they offer you comfort by furnishing inpatient hospital services. Okay? And I remind everybody the StreamYard link is there for anybody who wants to join the panel. And let's go on to the next one, because that's pretty succinct, folks. Mom goes in bearing labor pains, is charged for the inpatient hospital services under a spell of illness, and in that natural act of bearing labor pains, she comes forth with a child. And that child now, beginning with the first day, is now also furnished inpatient hospital services. So under one spell of illness, another spell of illness springs up, though both activities are natural, or the activity is natural, of two living souls. One living soul bringing forth another living soul. So what about that trust you're buried in? This is from Iowa Code 523A.102, definitions. And this is under in the probate code, cemetery and funeral merchandise and funeral services. It says, for purposes of this chapter, unless the context otherwise requires, authorized to do business within this state means a person licensed, registered, or subject to regulation by an agency of the state of Iowa, or who has filed a consent to service of process with the commissioner for purposes of this chapter. Beneficiary means any natural person, which is still a fiction, hold on, folks. Okay, I'm back. So means any natural person, and any time you see person, it's a fiction, no matter what comes before it. Just because it says natural doesn't mean it's real. That's just a description of a natural person, but it's still a person. It still only pertains to the record and how it's verbalized or written. Specified or included in a purchase agreement. So a beneficiary springs from a purchase agreement. Upon whose future death, cemetery merchandise, funeral merchandise, funeral services, or combination thereof are to be provided under the purchase agreement. So mom goes into the hospital and registers for services. That is the purchase agreement under a spell of illness. That hospital, whether you like to believe it or not, is a financial institution. We'll show you that. It goes on to say, burial account means an account established by a person with a financial institution for the purpose of funding the future purchase of cemetery merchandise, funeral services, or a combination thereof without any related trust agreement. Without any related trust agreement. So if mom goes in and expresses that she's a resident or a United States citizen, that's a contract. That's not stipulating the trust. Okay? So there's a presumption of contract, but not a trust. There's a presumption of a purchase agreement, but not a trust agreement. Burial trust fund means an irrevocable burial trust fund established by a person with a financial institution for the purpose of funding the future purchase of cemetery merchandise, funeral services, or a combination thereof upon the death of the person named in the burial trust fund's record, which must be enumerated, or a related purchase agreement. Burial trust fund does not include or imply the existence of any oral or written purchase agreement for cemetery merchandise, funeral services, or a combination thereof between the person and the seller. It does not include or imply the existence of any oral or written purchase agreement. In other words, it is the presumption. It is a presumption that I call the presumption. Cemetery merchandise means foundations, grave markers, tombstones, ornamental merchandise, memorials, and monuments sold under a purchase agreement that does not require installation within 12 months of the purchase. Commissioner means the Commissioner of Insurance or the Commissioner's designee. Social Security enumeration at birth. That's Social Security insurance in case the baby dies. Common business enterprise means a group of two or more business entities that share common ownership in excess of 50%. This is a partnership created by a marriage license that creates a small business concern with that group of two or more business entities and the state government. Mom and dad are two business entities claiming to be residents of the state in which is located in the United States as a United States citizen. Those are both businesses coming together with a license to merge as a common business enterprise. Delivery occurs when the cemetery merchandise, funeral merchandise, or the title document establishing an easement for burial rights is physically delivered to the purchaser or installed, except that burial of any item at the site of its ultimate use shall not constitute delivery for purposes of this chapter. Let me read that again. The cemetery merchandise delivery occurs when the cemetery merchandise, funeral merchandise, or the title document establishing an easement for burial rights. The title document establishing an easement for burial rights. Let that sink in, folks. Certificate of live birth is such title document establishing an easement for burial rights. You have land rights through a burial trust fund. It's already stated. The name is already known. It's on a title document, and it is evidence of burial rights. If it's evidence of burial rights, then it's also evidence of your natural existence for such burial. If authorized by a purchaser under a purchase agreement, cemetery merchandise has been permanently identified with the name of the purchaser or the beneficiary and delivered to a bonded warehouse or storage facility approved by the commissioner, and both title to the merchandise and a warehouse receipt have been delivered to the purchaser or beneficiary, and a copy of the warehouse receipt has been delivered to the seller for retention in its files. So it seems to me that with that birth certificate being a title document proving this, you should be able to put that forth to any funeral director, cemetery, to prove that there's already an easement provided. Okay? At least that's my interpretation here. And if you have issue with it, please let me know. If authorized by a purchaser under a purchase agreement, a polystyrene or polypropylene outer burial container has been permanently identified with the name of the purchaser or the beneficiary and delivered to a bonded warehouse or storage facility approved by the commissioner, and both title to the merchandise and a warehouse receipt have been delivered to the purchaser or beneficiary, and a copy of the warehouse receipt has been delivered to the seller for retention in its files. So basically, like I said, again before, as in trust law, the beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner in equity, and the true owner has the right to control and settle the estate. So in that, the beneficiary has the right to contact for a title document that establishes that, so he can then put it forward in the right hands to prove that that trust, that burial trust, is already established. And he gets a receipt saying that he paid for it Whatever your state charges. I paid for 3 of them, got it, and paid $79 for 3 of them. So it was like $25 each, and then minimum mailing cost. Doing business in this state means issuing or performing wholly or in part any term of a purchase agreement executed within the state of Iowa. So under a spell of illness, that's considered doing business in this state. And you have to be authorized to do business in the state. That's that resident and United States citizen. That's a presumed authorization to do business in the state. Financial institution means a state or federally insured bank, savings association, credit union, trust department thereof, or a trust company authorized to do business within this state and which has been granted trust powers under the laws of this state or the United States, which holds funds under a trust agreement. Financial institution does not include a seller, anyone employed by or directly involved with the seller in the seller's cemetery merchandise, funeral merchandise, or funeral services business. So the seller is a seller of funeral service businesses or funeral services business. Funeral merchandise means personal property used for the final disposition of a dead human body, including but not limited to clothing, caskets, vaults, urns, and internment receptacles. Funeral merchandise does not include easements for burial rights in a completed space or cemetery merchandise. So again, like I said, that birth certificate isn't evidence that you have one. It's evidence of burial rights in a completed space or cemetery plot as an easement. An easement is a protection, an environmental protection. So you go to that cemetery and you're going to find out it's environmentally protected. Funeral services means services provided for the final disposition of a dead human body, including but not limited to services necessarily or customarily provided for a funeral, or for the interment, entombment, or cremation of a dead human body, or any combination thereof. Funeral services does not include perpetual care or maintenance. Next of kin means the surviving spouse and heirs at law of the deceased. The person in the record, coincidentally enough, is known as a decedent. You are its next of kin. You, yourself is its next of kin. Parent company means a corporation that has a controlling interest in a seller. So a parent company would be a corporation that has a controlling interest in a seller. the controlling interest in a funeral services. Personal representative means a personal representative as defined in section 633.3. Personal representative includes executor and administrator, nothing else. So if the court is acting as the personal representative, or an administrator is acting as a personal representative in those courts, what person are they representing? Because they sure as hell shouldn't be representing your person if you're the executor. Probate assets means a decedent's property subject to administration by a personal representative, whether it be the administrator or the executor. And that probate asset means a decedent's property. Is that birth certificate a decedent's property? Will includes codicil. I want to explain to everybody here. Codicil. That's what their codes are. They are codicils. A will is your own codicil. And then you have a living will, wherein you appoint a power of attorney so that somebody else can administrate your affairs of estate if you are disabled. If you become disabled somehow and can't execute your estate, you have a living will set up to allow the courts and everybody else to understand that you've already stated your will and granted powers of attorney to somebody else in trust to administrate your estate for you. Thus, your will and a living will is itself, by itself, an express trust. The contract is inviolable by others because it's a private codicil according to your will. So let's get back into it. It also includes a testamentary instrument that merely appoints an executor. I call it administrator, because not at all times do you become disabled that it will be that you may remain disabled forever. Many times at the end of your life, yes. And there you would have an executor, because once you pass on, they would go ahead and execute your will of distributing your assets to the beneficiaries so named in your will. And a testamentary instrument that merely revokes or revives another will. Will includes codicil. It also includes a testamentary instrument that merely appoints an executor. That's the living will. And a testamentary instrument that merely revokes or revives another will. Mine specifically is a revocation of the trust of the state's will, the Health and Human Services, and a revival of the will of our Father which art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. That's my will. I can't express my will from a personal aspect, for he's no respecter of persons. And therefore I can only express his will. This is a faithful saying, that I will, that thou constantly affirm, that he who believed in God be careful to maintain good works. Okay, that looks like that's it. And let's show you when you look it up, just a real quick question. Is a hospital a financial institution? The GLBA, which is the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, has three main components which a financial institution, including a hospital, must comply. A privacy rule. It's all about privacy. Okay. Now, like I said, with mom and dad getting married, that creates a partnership. When it comes to the birth certificate and the decedent estate, what we're looking at there, again, that's a corporate entity. United States citizen means a United States business, just as a United States business means a United States citizen. So it's a corporate entity. And right now, on the record, there's no will. And so the court just automatically administrates the estate because nobody's professed their will. Okay? Nobody's made their will known in their probate administrative courts. So what we're looking at, just like the mom and dad getting married, it's a merger of a company or two small business concerns that creates a partnership that is essentially still the same a same likewise small business concern with the state. But with this, as I've expressed before, it's just like a bankruptcy or a corporate takeover. Greetings, Iman. How you doing tonight, sister? Oops, we lost her. So let's take a look at this. What is a corporate takeover? A corporate takeover occurs when a company, also known as the acquirer or bidder, acquires another company, also known as the target, by purchasing a majority stake in it. By purchasing a majority stake in it. Age of majority, I'm old enough to make my own decisions. That happens to have my name on it. And nobody else can rightfully claim it for its expression of the burial trust. It's a title document that's not titled for them. This gives the acquiring company control of the target company's operations, assets, and liabilities. So as I've expressed, just me holding that document, no one else has any right to supersede it. You have to know what you're doing with it, and don't do anything stupid with it. And that's why my pretense is to get it from the state as holding evidence of legal title and equitable title, therefore the ability to collapse the trust, revoke the trust, and control the settlement by directing an administrative probate referee to settle the estate matters that they're no longer allowed to administrate. That's my attempt here. So let's take a look at it again. Corporate takeover according to WEX. A corporate takeover occurs when the controlling interest in a corporation shifts from one party to another. The controlling interest shifted from the state to myself when I made a claim upon the document, the title document. That claim was made merely by asking for it. They verified information over the phone, never received a picture ID, just the individual's name and number. And of course, a place to send it. Corporate takeovers are categorized as either hostile or friendly, depending on whether the management of the company being taken over is a willing participant or not. So when somebody took over that corporate activity stuff before you even had knowledge of how to work it and used it against you all of your life, that's a hostile corporate takeover. As per the requirements of the Williams Act, any party who obtains more than 5% of corporation's outstanding stock must file a report with the Securities Exchange Commission claiming whether they intend to initiate a takeover or not. So as I've explained before with that James A. Williams Trust that's filed with the SEC, and I did find another document showing that they turned down his filing based on 6 elements, and I'll review that someday. But the premise is foundational. The premise is foundational. We are supposed to communicate with the SEC for that corporate takeover. Whether you were to do it like James A. Williams and do all that number stuff, I don't know. I would think that just automatically, by correcting the records, certain things would happen, and you should be satisfied with that. At least that's what I'm going to work on, because like I said, my intent is to help reconcile this stuff, come up with a solution, and be able to put out a step-by-step idea for other people to follow. However, if I don't ever reach that resolution, I'm good with it. I'm still doing the best I can to figure this out. This is shit that 1 in a million people might figure out. Because even many of the people that are doing this don't know what's going on or don't care, or know what's going on and don't care, and are negligent and willfully willing to harm you. They don't give a fuck. They're just doing their job. They've got a family to protect, and if it means you falling down by the wayside and getting harmed, they don't give a rat's ass. So, if the party declares they intend to take a takeover, they will then release a tender offer, which must also be registered with the SEC. A tender offer is an outstanding offer to any shareholders to purchase their shares for a set price. This price is typically above market value to incentivize a large number of parties to sell, and the company making the tender offer must disclose financial statements regarding how it is financed. All glory goes to him. I give him all credit. Tender offers are also subject to the requirements of 17 CFR 240.14 E through F, which regulates when and how tender offers can be changed or taken off the market. In a hostile takeover, the tender offer is released to the public, and the success of the takeover depends on whether the terms of the offer entice enough shareholders to sell their stake in the company. If a friendly takeover, or in a friendly takeover, the management of the company being taken over negotiates terms with the company initiating the takeover and holds a shareholder vote on whether to accept the terms or not. So we're merely doing a friendly takeover, negotiating the terms of settlement as according to the errors in the record, so that all parties are made whole. I make all things new, and therefore I tell you, write, these words are true and faithful. I come in good faith. Takeovers occur for a collection of reasons, though the primary one includes industry diversification, corporate raider attempts, and removal of competition. Due to the potential antitrust behavior of takeover for the purposes of removing competition, all takeover attempts, hostile or not, must receive clearance from the FTC to ensure that a monopoly will not result. Federal Trade Commission. We're talking about trade names and trademarks, folks. Okay? And it's in relation to monopolies. So real quick here before I finish up for tonight, the end of it here is that the end all be all, like I've said before, is to hopefully establish an account with the local credit union as a creditor in a union of creditors that are conducting their credit affairs together and not as a standalone bank that's creating a monopoly. They can't allow for a banking monopoly. See, the monopoly isn't in the banks and can't be in the banks because it's already had in the Postal Service. It's called the Global Postal Monopoly. And so I'll be talking again tomorrow about The UPU. I'll be back tomorrow with the UPU and the Constitution of Universal Postal Union's preamble and the preamble or Constitution, excuse me, the Constitution of the Universal House of Justice. Now, this is a document I come across in regards to the Baha'i faith, and it's a very, very well written document. And just like everybody else has their constitution, to be part of that credit union, you have to state like terms. And that's what I've been speaking on for a long time, is that it's a grammatical thing. There's been some twists and curves and stuff like that in the language that's been strangling people. And we're hopefully going to help sort that out step by step here one day. Again, I hope to find a resolution in this through equity, so we can show people step by step how to correct that misidentification and who all needs to be involved long before we get to be 50, 58 years of age and doing all the research then. This is stuff we should be pointing out to our younger generations so they don't step into it ankle deep, head first. You know what I mean? Diving into it head first and ending up into shit ankle deep. Anyway, like I said, I'll be back tomorrow night with some more on the UPU and probate. Or no, not probate. We're done with probate. Going through my notes yeah, let's no, I already did that last night. Okay. Yeah, I guess we're done with that information. Sometimes I lose track in my notes and think I've got more somewhere, but like I said, I'll be back tomorrow night with Constitution of the Universal Postal Union. How do you constitute yourself? Because the way they constituted you in this system was you were born in a spell of illness and buried in a trust. And people are trying to find their way out. And again, like I said, hopefully I'll be able to show people a step-by-step process one day. As you know, I filed or sent in my tort claim to the governor here, the 12th. And that's something that they get up to 6 months to respond. And in that response, it may take another 12, 18, 24 months to actually fully resolve. So hopefully it won't take that long. But just for those that are impatient, wanting to hear the information, I've been putting it all out there, and there's plenty to research. So now it's just a matter of coming to the effects. Like I read off in the video last night, the effects. You are the cause of certain effects. There are certain effects that were caused by mom that induced you into believing you had to do certain things that then caused further, deeper effects. This is what we're trying to get out of, is all the delusion. So it's a matter of finding out what they mean by the definitions they're using and hopefully show you what's going on. Exactly. It's a hall of mirrors. They're mimicking certain spiritual processes, and when you find out, again, the English language is a colorful language. It's beautiful once you find out how it can be used. And by doing this research, that's how you find out how they're using it. And it's, in those concepts, many people might see it as being very devious. But again, it's just a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. So forgive them. Forgive them for they know not what they're doing. And this is proven because they say, I'm just doing my job. And then when you talk to them about their ethics, they think it's all skewed. They don't understand the first thing about it. So yeah, they don't understand a lot. And that's why it's important for you to do your research. Again, people, I remind you, don't believe me. Don't believe the neighbor. Don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Learn how to do your research so you know. In the meantime, you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. And that's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye now.